And welcome back to another episode of Psychic Evolution. I'm Jamie Clark.
And I'm Maggie Clark, and this is the podcast where you discover the psychic potential within to empower yourself and manifest your psychic and mediumship gifts. So today's episode is going to be on psychic connections. And this is based off of many listeners' questions. So we're going to go through a few questions and talk about what are strong psychic connections? How do they show up? Why do they show up? In what ways do they show up? We have several questions that kind of tie into this theme that we'll be addressing from all of our listeners today. So we want to thank you all for reaching out with your questions. We appreciate you all and thank you so much. And so we're going to get into the first question today. What does it mean when we have a strong psychic connection with a particular one person? And this could be like a daughter, a son, a friend, really anyone. Could be your mom. But what is the nature of this intuitive psychic connection? And what explains this? Is it a certain harmonic? Is it a wavelength? Is it a frequency? Is it the same soul group? Are there previous lives? What do you think, Jamie? What could this all mean?
On and
on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of equate the connection like you and I have is we're just being us, but we're on that same channel. We tend to finish each other's sentences. We are saying same things at the same time. So it can be a variety of different connections in many different ways of human life experience. In this case, it might be a past life connection with this person. Otherwise, and it's a soul connection, like they're part of your soul group. Remember, to me, it is the universe brings us comfort. And in that, we'll tend to have soul groups or familiar beings that we can connect with lifetime, if we're able to, after lifetime, and make those connections so that we can realize we're not alone. But it's really great, and it's not that you don't have your own identity, it's you have your own identity, but on those frequencies, on those channels. Like you and I, Mag, we're on that same channel, and the good thing is we just have to be us. I think that more people are starting to allow themselves to find themselves within relationships, not lose themselves to it. And those relationships are many different facets, not just, marriage or any of those, but friendships, workships, all of those dynamics that more people are waking up and being activated to make these connections. It's beautiful.
And I feel like when we open our hearts, this is where we feel those soul vibe connections. And it's like, oh, so it's really easy if we love someone, we love say a daughter or our best friend or something, and we open our hearts to them. That's when we allow ourselves to feel the connections. The more past lives you had, the more lifetimes that you shared or intense experiences that you are on the same channel, that will build that familiarity. And so a lot of times, you're right, those souls come together to accomplish a purpose. Remember, we come here as individuals for certain lessons that we need individually, but then there's also collective lessons that we're all learning. And Earth's connections and Earth's expansion of consciousness, the Earth's expansion of consciousness, there's a lot that goes into that. So if more souls can come together that are familiar, they're already comfortable with each other, they've already had other lifetimes experiences together, they can come back and maybe come together to accomplish more of an impact, because a group energy is an exponential energy to help expand the consciousness of humanity. So when we think about that, the more of these soul families that find themselves together, whether it's on one-on-one relationships or even within a group, you can really accomplish quite a bit when you're all on the same channel and you're all vibing with the same thing. If you think about 2,000 years ago when, Jesus and his followers, I'm going to bring this up just because it had a huge impact on humanity, they were all vibing that same channel. And eventually that same channel was picked up by a religion and brought forward. But that same channel also brought in a level of consciousness. And it was a collective consciousness within that group until it extended out into the world. And so feel into your soul connections of how important that could be, where you're all on the same channel, sending love into the world or positive energy or love to the earth or whatever it is that you might be doing together or collectively. When you're in that same frequency, that same channel, then you can really accomplish quite a bit to help humanity as a whole, as well as your individual lessons while you're here.
And it becomes that heart chakra. Notice we tend to associate that with love, with that powerful connection. And in this, we've been left alone to find ourselves, so to speak. What if there's a potential that the universe knows the comfort, of course, but that this is not the only planet that we lived on? What if we've had other connections to other souls in other worlds, and in this time, we're now being brought together more consciously? And then we start to get into the power numbers. Then you get the amplified consciousness, the amplified tuning in, and the acceptance of a whole new reality. What you accept to be can actually be. And when we get others that are on the same channel or the same frequency and tuning in, it becomes a little bit more empowering and less disempowering. And when we can realize that we are all interconnected, it is truly all about the love. That kind of connection it allows us to grow in our own way, at our own pace, in any of those dynamics, so that for us, we feel connected to the information that we're gaining. It's not just everything's been thrown at us. It's, hey, from the inside out, so to speak, I'm experiencing a lot of these dynamics, and I am now understanding more of how to place that information on those life experiences. And the great thing is we are being brought together in a more amplified time. This is more of the tipping point of consciousness for humanity. And as this is happening, you're going to see a shift of consciousness in many, many different ways. And it's kind of like we're reopening and reconnecting with ourselves in a whole new way of seeing things.
And then once our hearts are open, this is when our psychic connections can really develop. You know, a connection between like a mother and a daughter, for instance, or a mother and a son, like look at Jamie and his mom. It was such a bond, right? And the hearts are already open and connected from birth. So if that can maintain that openness, that love channel can be a frequency, the communication and the connection on a psychic channel is more profound, and it can grow and it can kind of expand because your heart's already open. So think about that. That's usually what can help those psychic connections just expand naturally. But then you can also cultivate them. You can practice telepathy. You can practice really tuning into that other person, or just being open to receiving information around that other person. So just be open, because these bonds, these connections, they can be soul family. They can be, some people might say soulmates. Some people say twin flames. There's a lot of language and a lot of different types of relationships. Regardless, you have this connection that is profound, and you can work with it. And as long as your hearts and your intentions are in the same field, the same playing field, you can really accomplish quite great feats. And then if you choose consciously between the two of you to practice those psychic connections, all it does is create that bond even stronger.
And to clear a channel. Like for my mom and I, we were very strongly connected. So I was able to tune in a little bit more effectively and efficiently to the information that she was telepathically sending me, whether it was words, colors, pictures, whatever the case is. It allowed me to be more open and receptive. Plus, if you feel that connection to the other person, you're more than likely comfortable enough to just kind of open up to go, okay, what else you got to say, instead of, okay, what do you got to say? It's like, no, man, you can just be comfortable. And when you can find your own rhythm, your own cadence, your own dynamic steps of attainment, basically, because we already are it. But bringing other people in our soul groups, people that we can hang with more comfortably, that actually get us. We don't have to be anything different but be us. And I think that that's happening more and more for people. It doesn't make life easy in every way. However, it lets you know that we're not alone. We're all in this together.
Beautiful. All right, Jamie, here's a question for you. Have you ever done a mediumship reading simultaneously with another medium present in the same room for the same sitter? And were those messages for mediumship identical? And can the spirit show up to meet? How does this work, Jamie? Because you've been in a lot of these different situations. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that's a great question. And yes, I do presentations where I have done presentations with other mediums in the same room, and we take turns. There is what I call a piggyback ride. And sometimes as a medium, we'll pick up a soul print for a loved one who's we're doing a reading for, and then the other person, the other psychic medium, and again, we're all psychic mediums, but the other one will start to tune in, and their loved ones on the other side will know how to give other information. They're not going to, more than likely, they're not going to just keep repeating the same thing because then it's a silly. But when they can know, not only is this person listening, but that person is. And not only that, it's kind of a clearer, stronger channel because now there's more than just one. It seems to be a little bit more fluid, a little bit more clear. And in doing that, the ability to make these connections, because our loved ones on the other side are very, very hungry to make those connections. And most of us just aren't listening. But when they can go to, in this case, multiple mediums that are presenting at the same time, it's an amplified energy to go, that's not just the same thing that this person said. This is the connection to your loved one, but they just gave some other piece of information. And sometimes they'll just build upon those pieces of information to get the bigger picture to go, holy cow, there's no way you could know that. I'm like, except we know it. And and that kind of connection is, I always make sure, as you know, that if I'm good in its mediumship, your people, your loved ones are great. All I'm doing is listening. But that amplified receptivity, in this case, multiple mediums doing it at the same time, can actually also open up a door of consciousness for maybe a loved one that wasn't ready to make the connections that now click, oh, this feels good. It feels like the right time in the right way. And because the energy is harmonized, they're not fearful. It's, all right, finally I'm ready. So the cool thing is that there are a lot of times when a loved one who maybe the person that we're reading for didn't expect to come through, they'll start coming through going, hey, we have no control over who comes through or the information, but we'll always stay true to it. And it becomes more of like an amplified beacon of light. And as I always say, everyone has the ability, and we're vibrational light beings. The more that you use your psychic abilities, the brighter your light gets. And so when you can work with other people who are consciously working with their own abilities, it becomes even brighter, more amplified, and more harmonized. It's beautiful.
And then oftentimes the person on the other side coming through might appear different to the mediums too.
Yes.
There are many times where, they'll appear either older to one person, younger to another, depending on how people perceive that, how they're receiving the information, how they target soul prints of energy. So it can all be different, because we're using our psychic mediumship gifts in a vastly different way all the time. I don't receive the same as you do. And there's lots of times that someone will be around us on the other side and Jamie and I will both feel them, but we're sensing them differently. You might receive like a message. I might just feel something. I might see them in one way. You might see them in another way. So this is all possible because we're all receiving the way that we can and the way that's comfortable for us, which is different for everyone. We're all very unique with our gifts, very unique with how we receive information. Are there similarities? Absolutely. But on the other side, they're going to get through to us however we can receive them, which means the visions might be different. The information that comes through might be different. It doesn't mean that one is better or one is more accurate. It just means that how we read and how we perceive and feel into those spaces and places of mediumship are different for different people.
Finding your own rhythm, your own way of reading the energy, because the more comfort that you have with how you receive information, how you, if you need to, can interpret the information, because for me it's like, it's not about me to understand, here's what I'm being shown or given or made feel. I don't ever try to place that in someone's life because it's not about me. It's that kind of go, if that person knows the connection, they'll know where to place it. That's it, just the information. And it becomes really a beautiful experience when we don't know a person that we're reading for, and all of a sudden they start to become more familiar just by their loved one's information that they were sharing, going, oh, you had a similar circumstance. So it's really cool because that love brings everyone together. And just if you're seeing a medium or you're using your abilities, when you're connecting with a regular person, so to speak, you're amplifying that neural soul way. So the more that you're open, the more that their loved one who you're reading for physically is going to be able to open themselves up to tune in. And it's all about love and compassion. They don't make you try to understand. You don't make them. They're not stuck in any way. It's that kind of co-creation. It's that kind of teamwork. And it becomes more validating when we don't know your loved ones, but we'll be able to pick up personalities and characteristics and dynamics to go, that's either really good guesswork or, I don't know, something to it. Like, right, question everything, but be open. And when we can make those connections, I love that aspect, because when I'm able to be accurate with personalities and all of that, they're like, that's them. That's exactly right. And that person allows themselves to open up to their own connection with their loved ones. It's brilliant. And I love it because it is effortless. All they had to do was allow that connection, but also feel the vibrational connection of you as you're receiving that information to go, ooh, I like that energy. That feels good. Okay, I'm open for it. What else they got to say? Really, it's a beautiful step-stage process, always about comfort and love.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Let's see what our next question is, Jamie. All right, so this is a question for me. Maggie, do you consider tarot reading a form of channeling? Or is a higher source making certain specific cards come out of the deck in your hands for you to interpret based on what you've learned, your educational knowledge of each card's meaning or number? What is the driving unique card selection? You know, is it spirit guides? Is it spirit manipulating your hand? Or how is this working? Okay, so this is how I describe the reading itself. One, I put a calling card to my higher self to connect to the sitter's higher self, so that there is a kind of like what we want to call this, a pathway or a connection being made upstairs in the spirit realm. So that when I'm shuffling, I always tune into my higher self and I'm like, all right, higher self, you let me know when I'm done shuffling. And it just, you just shuffle until you feel like, oh, that's good. It's just a feeling. It allows you to actually start trusting the feelings, the intuition that you naturally have. So I shuffle them up with that in mind. Now, if I'm actually wanting to channel something from another person's higher self, I will literally put a calling card out to that person's higher self saying, hey, person's higher self, I would like to channel the essence and the energy of your energy signature when I'm shuffling instead of my higher self. So that would be a form of channeling when you're shuffling, is you're allowing that other person's higher self to come help shuffle these cards and channel through you to shuffle these cards. So that would be a form of channeling. Typically, that's not what I do unless I'm doing a quote unquote channeled message. And I do have soul growth tarot messages that are channeled where I'm just, all right, I tune into their higher self. I go through my higher self to their higher self, and then I channel that. So to me, that feels almost like a blended energy. I don't feel like I'm trans-channeling. That's not what it feels like when I'm doing that. It's just like, no, I'm just tapping into an energy signature. But my higher self does create the gateway for that. It creates the comfort zone because I'm so used to working with my higher self. So I hope that makes sense to people out there. I'm working through my own comfort zone so that I'm comfortable channeling whatever it is that I'm channeling. Now, the way that I describe people is every card has a unique energy signature, and like energy attracts like energy. So when I'm shuffling, it's more like all the energy that is going to be significant. I already have a spread that is in my mind when I'm shuffling. So a spread looks like maybe a 3-card spread. It could be past, present, future, right? So I already have the spread in mind that I'm going to lay down so that my team, my higher self can work with the spread already in my mind, knowing that the first card is going to go in the first position. The second card is going to go in the second position. So we have past, present. The third card will be a future position. So my higher self already knows this before I even start shuffling, what spread that I'm going to do. So it's a communication. I'm saying, hey, higher self, these are the positions I'm going to lay out. And then I trust that like energy attracts like energy for those positions that have already been set in place. So I'm basically giving my higher self parameters. A spread is called parameters of information and what I want to receive for what dynamic in someone's life. Is it an environment? Is it a challenge? Is it a gift? Is it an energy to use? You know, all of these parts of a spread and positions of a spread create a dynamic flow of communication so that like energy attracts like energy for those specific targeted vantage points of how I'm going to read. So when I'm reading, I read through what I know about the cards, the information of what I know about the cards, how I've seen cards play together in the past, because I have a Rolodex of, oh my God, when these two cards come together, I've seen this time after time. This is how it vibrationally feels to me. And also, I always have a focus card in every spread that I do. So every card is read through the lens of the focus. So if a focus card is the Seven of Swords, it's going to be vastly different than the Two of Cups. Even if you're reading the Eight of Pentacles, I'm going to read it differently and a different way based on what the focal point is. Because the focal point is like putting a different lens on a camera to see a different vantage point, a different perspective. So I build that into my spreads so that it just allows me to be fluid with that. And yes, I do draw on everything that I know, but then absolutely you have to use your intuition. How does this feel for this person? What is vibrating for this person and where does it land inside of me? I always, when I'm shuffling cards and doing a read, I'm like, allow me to help this person as much as I can, or to serve this person, or to be, you know, of service to this person. So a lot of times I say things, I'm like, I've never said that about a card before. Wow, that just flew out of my mouth. And sometimes I've said it 1,000 times because it's just the way that I perceive the messages. The biggest thing for me when reading something is to go with what you know about the cards and then ask your intuition to be a part of it. Ask your higher self for the messages. Ask the sitter's higher self to be a part of this process so that you can get their perspectives, hopefully to infuse on your perspectives. But again, we all have to read from who we are. Now, if I'm completely channeling and I wasn't even present, you know, I might get really, really clear communication that the sitter would understand because I'm channeling their higher self, and that would be maybe more effective than my higher self. Do I always do that? No. Has that happened before? Absolutely. Do I have complete control over that yet? I don't know. I'm still learning. So when we are working with channeling and working with tarot and working with these facets of developing how do we communicate these messages, there's a lot of filters that go in place. There's a lot of parameters. Now, we as psychic mediums or tarot readers get to set up those parameters before going into any reading. So the parameters I always set up is connecting to the higher selves, having a spread already in my mind, and then trusting myself, my intuition, and shuffling until I absolutely feel, okay, that feels good. I'm done. And sometimes I just stop shuffling. I'm like, am I done? And I'm like, can't shuffle anymore. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, wow, this feels amazing. Okay, this is it. This is gold. So the feelings can be different at times when I stop shuffling, but it's always like, okay, I'm done. It's just a done feeling. So trust yourself if you're developing your ability to read tarot and to maybe even work with channeling with tarot. Trust yourself, set up your own rules and parameters of what you're comfortable experiencing. I do find that the tarot, I love numbers, I love elements. So to understand the basic of the tarot, of how it's built, of how some of these archetype images can play on our subconscious, I think that's super valuable information. Do you need that to read tarot? No. These cards are meant to activate your intuition, to activate your psychic ability, to activate your ability to receive messages. But they're also there to guide you and to impart this ancient archetype wisdom as energy signatures.
You know, you kind of bring up an interesting point, and that is when I do the mediumship, there are times when their loved ones on the other side will start giving psychic upcoming potentials for the person I'm reading for. When you're reading with the cards, are you able to not only target and connect with their higher self, the person you're reading for, but have you ever tried to connect with their loved ones to maybe drop some intuitive psychic information of potential into the reading? How does that work?
Well, interesting enough, Jamie, that is like a new branch of my tarot reading experiences right now. So, yes, that has happened. I've had someone ask for mediumship and I'm like, "Hey, I'm really not a professional medium. There are better mediums than me. I could refer you to Jamie or some of my other friends." Yet, there was a time where I was like, you know what, let me just see what I get. If you're open to it, let's just try it. And for sure enough, as soon as I opened that channel of communication, I could feel their loved one. I could see their loved one. I could perceive from their heart messages that were coming through certain cards. Not all of the cards, but certain cards I felt were messages from their loved ones. So it's a new aspect of learning how to open up to mediumship. And there's all those cards are vibrational energies. They're information. So that's it. That's all the card is. It's like, hey, this card has a vibration of energy. And so when you learn the cards, you learn the vibrations. Now, our loved ones on the other side say, hey, those vibrations. Let me tell you through my perspective. Let me try to infuse this feeling into that card so that you can feel what it is I'm communicating. So for me, that's a new type of energy.
But the great thing is you're realizing it has versatility. It's not only just one way to read it. That's why, for myself, it's having fun to go, if we have a target question, well, there's many different avenues that we can attain information and insight from, depending on who I'm working for or what organization or whatever the case is. I'll be able to tap into either the angels, ascended masters, interdimensionals, extraterrestrials, our loved ones, all of those types of dynamics that I am the tuner. We're just tuning into the different channels, and the ability to tune in different channels with their loved ones who know the genuine sincerity of what we're trying to do, in this case with or for the person that is being read for. They will do the best they can to give as much accurate information to that person who's doing the reading so that it becomes a lot more validating to go, there's no way you could know that except you know it. And that mannerism is something that they always used to do. And I'm like, and they're still doing it, right? I'm just mimicking them. I don't know them. And they're like, yeah. So it's cool because it becomes a lot more validating. And when you have accuracy with personalities and characteristics out of billions and billions of people, I love that because that person you're reading for is like, there's no way you could know that except that's exactly their name. And they'll start to open up and release and relax more. Then it's not so much fear of like, I don't know what I'm going to hear. It's, I'm looking forward to what else I can hear. So it becomes just a whole shift in energy. And the great thing is your loved ones get the credit. They're just working with us the best that they can while we're doing the best that we can to bring that language of communication through love of the soul.
Beautiful. So we want to thank all of you for reaching out with these wonderful questions. We love them. Keep them coming. Keep these psychic connections open, whether you're connecting to the higher self, reading tarot cards, connecting to the other side, these psychic connections, connecting with people here on earth, just from heart to heart, soul to soul. You've got this. Keep stirring this up within your psyche. Keep working with your abilities. Practice, practice, practice.
And let's have fun in our psychic evolution.
And just so you guys know, this is the last episode of season 7. We're going to be on break. We will be back with season 8 on August 9th. That's Wednesday, August 9th. Thank you so much for joining us. We will release some mini episodes here and there as we are flowing through the summertime. We're going to take a nice breather to prepare for next season. So please, if you have ideas for new episodes that you're really curious about or questions that you want answered, throw them our way. We will incorporate them into season 8. And remember, all questions are valuable. I know there's some people that are hesitant about asking certain questions because they're like, oh, this is probably too basic or this might be too weird, and no question is wrong. We will get to as many questions as we can. If you have a question, most likely there are thousands of people out in this world with the same exact question. So have fun with your psychic evolution. Enjoy the summer. Enjoy this beautiful time. We're going going to take deep breaths and do sun salutations and have a beautiful time ourselves celebrating our birthdays this summer. And please, if you are enjoying this podcast, please share it with a friend or rate and review it on Apple Podcasts. Keep us current in the podcast world. Thank you guys for tuning in again, and we'll see you at season 8.
Lots of love. See you soon.